Someone didn't wake up this morning. You shook them. You called their name. Nothing. Your body knew something was wrong before your mind did. That feeling, that specific dread, is the oldest feeling in human history. And what happened next, 300,000 years ago, will change how you see death forever. Here's something nobody told you. Ancient humans had no concept of death as we understand it today. Not because they were primitive, but because nothing in their experience prepared them for permanent absence. Everything that had ever stopped temporarily. Sleep, unconsciousness, illness, everything came back. The sun disappeared every night. It came back. The river dried in summer. It came back. The wounded hunter lay still for days. He came back. So when someone wouldn't wake up, the first response wasn't grief. It was confusion and then action. Anthropologist David Lewis Williams at the University of Witwatersrand spent decades studying early human cognition and ritual behavior. His research suggests that for our earliest ancestors, the boundary between sleep and death was not a line. It was a blur. They didn't know the difference. Not at first, not reliably. A sleeping person and a dead person looked the same, felt the same. The chest barely moved. The eyes were closed. The voice was gone. Everything that distinguished them was invisible. And that uncertainty, that not knowing, drove everything that happened next. They waited, they watched, they touched, they called the name again, because in every previous experience, waiting had worked. Patience had brought people back. So they tried everything they knew. They made noise, they brought food, they built the fire higher so the warmth would reach. They pressed close and waited for the breathing to change. It never did. And that gap between everything they knew and what they were now seeing created something entirely new in the human mind. But here's where it gets strange. Archaeological evidence from sites across Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, some dating back 300,000 years, shows something remarkable. Ancient humans didn't leave their dead. They stayed, they waited, they returned. At Shanidar cave in Iraq, excavated by Ralph Solecki of Columbia University in 1960, Neanderthal remains were found buried with what appears to be intentional placement. Bodies arranged, positioned carefully, not abandoned. At Bordeaux Cave in South Africa, a burial dating to 74,000 years ago, was found an infant carefully wrapped with a perforated shell placed beside it. Someone took time, someone made a choice. These were not accidents. These were decisions made by people who didn't fully understand what had happened but felt something needed to be done about it. Think about what that means. These were people with no tradition to follow, no ceremony to copy, no language to describe what they were experiencing. They invented the response from nothing, from pure feeling. They arranged the body because something in them couldn't leave it disordered. They placed objects because something in them needed to give. They stayed because leaving felt wrong in a way they had no words for. And they came back the next day and the day after, not because a ritual told them to, because they couldn't stop, because the absence pulled them back the same way a presence once did. The question is why? Why did a brain with no concept of death act as if death had to be answered? The answer isn't cultural, it isn't spiritual, it's neurological. There's something even deeper happening here. Your brain right now, today, is physically incapable of fully simulating its own non-existence. Neuroscientist Yair Dor-Ziderman at Bar-Ilan University published research in 2019 in NeuroImage showing that the predictive brain actively shields itself from the concept of personal death. When subjects were shown their own name paired with death-related words, the brain's predictive system shut down, refused to process it. This isn't denial, this is architecture. Your brain cannot model a world in which you do not exist. It always places itself at the center of every simulation. Every future, it imagines you are there, because a brain that could fully accept its own ending would have no reason to plan, to protect, or to survive. Ancient humans had the same brain, facing the still body of someone they had eaten with, hunted with, slept beside. For years, their brain couldn't fully compute what it was seeing. The person was there and not there. Present in every memory, absent in every sense. Their brain kept generating expectations, waiting for the person to move, to speak, to look back. And when they didn't, the brain generated those responses anyway, in dreams, in sounds, in shadows, at the edge of the firelight. And the brain, unable to accept permanent absence, did the only thing it knew how to do. It kept the relationship alive. But here's the part that changes everything. What ancient humans did when someone wouldn't wake up didn't just shape burial practices. It shaped religion, art, language, civilization itself. The moment a human knelt beside a still body and performed a gesture, arranged a limb, placed an object, spoke a sound, something new entered the world. Symbolic behavior, the ability to act on something that wasn't physically present. Researcher Francesco at the University of Bordeaux has argued that deliberate burial is one of the earliest markers of fully modern human cognition. Not tools, not fire, the treatment of the dead. Because to bury someone, to mark their absence with intention, you have to be able to hold two things simultaneously: the person as they were and the world without them. That cognitive leap, holding absence as something real, is the same leap that gave us memory, imagination, planning, and storytelling. We didn't develop those capacities and then start burying our dead. We started burying our dead, and those capacities grew from the effort. Every god ever imagined began here. Every prayer ever spoken began here. Every piece of art made to preserve a face or a moment began here, beside a body that wouldn't wake up, in a world that had no framework for what was happening. So what does this leave inside you? That dread you feel when someone doesn't answer. When a room feels wrong. When a presence you expected isn't there. That isn't weakness. That isn't anxiety. That is 300,000 years of a brain that learned the hard way that absence matters. That the people around you are the most important variable in your survival. And that when one of them stops moving, something must be done. The rituals we perform today around death, the vigils, the gatherings, the objects placed in coffins, the flowers left at graves, are not modern inventions. They are the continuation of something that began in a cave beside a body that wouldn't wake up by someone who didn't have the words for what they were feeling, but felt it anyway, just like you. The need to stay, the need to do something, the refusal to simply walk away and leave the absence unmarked. That impulse didn't come from culture. It came from somewhere older, something built into the architecture of a brain that never fully learned how to let go. And here is what that means for you right now. When you grieve, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are not struggling to accept something that should be simple. You are doing exactly what 300,000 years of human evolution built you to do. Your brain is running the same sequence it always ran, waiting for the person to come back, generating their voice, expecting and around their presence in spaces they used to fill. It isn't malfunction. It isn't pathology. It is the oldest program in the human mind, running exactly as designed in a situation it was never built to resolve. The grief you carry, however old, however quiet, is not a sign that something went wrong inside you. It is a sign that something went very right, that you loved someone enough for your brain to build a version of them and refuse to delete it. Ancient humans didn't understand death, but they felt its weight completely. And in that feeling and the refusal to simply walk away, they became something new. The rituals changed, the shelters changed, the language changed, but the feeling didn't. That specific dread when someone won't wake up, that pull to stay, that need to do something, anything in the face of permanent absence. That's not modern, that's not cultural. That's the oldest thing inside you, and you've been carrying it your entire life without ever knowing why.